Hey, yes, thank you everybody for coming. Let me grab the slides to get us going. So, welcome to the first seminar here. I'm very excited for everyone to be able to see this. So, this is business basics for content creators. So, we will be going over some basics that I think every content creator needs to know moving forward. So let's start. Who am I? I am Dean Elazab. I've been a lawyer for 10 years. So I was a content creator before I went to law school, did that through law school, was a professional StarCraft player for a little bit, fighting game player, fighting game commentator, and then moved to the other side of the table to work in content creation. I represent VTubers, YouTube streamers, and cosplayers, kind of everyone in the creator scene. I've worked with talent from all sorts of places, from WME, Mythic, OTK, VShojo, that's a whole story I can't tell on this one, and other major international talent brands. So I've been working in especially the VTuber scene for about the last 2 years and really have dove in and wanted to help with a lot of the things that happen in this scene. So, one of the first things I tell people is that you are already running a business. The IRS really sees that as about $1,000 of income, and all of a sudden they want to treat you as a business. So, so many people think that they can think about these problems or these things later, but it's just a real concern that, once money starts coming in, very quickly you need to have all your ducks in a row. And just the fact that y'all are here thinking about this stuff also shows that you know that you're going to need some more legitimacy to what you do in terms of making sure, everything goes well. So, as you know, in this scene, we see tons of things that happen on X, Blue Sky, etc., about squabbles between people that could have all been solved with contracts. So, that's one of the parts of this as well, is seeing where we go from both the legal perspective, business perspective, as well as where you can protect yourself with contracts. So before we get started on the actual contracts, I want to kind of go through the content creator career progression. So this is to make sure that you, on the opposite, don't overprotect. I always tell people you need to spend the money that you need to spend. I hate when I hear that people have spent thousands on legal, accounting, and getting everything set up before they really need to. It's the equivalent of someone spending 5K on a, gaming streamer setup before they go live for the first time. So the first step is hobbyists, just, posting for fun, doing what you need to. And so right there, you really, nothing's too urgent. You're just doing it for fun. You're not really signing anything. Just know about protecting yourself. But, usually that's the case right there. Once you start earning actual money, you need to start tracking your income in simple contracts. So one of the big ones, the next step we had was Part-Time Pro. This is where you start basically signing contracts. So you got brand deals, you're getting money from, Twitch or YouTube from your subscribers, and maybe you're looking at offloading some of your work to focus on content creation. This is really where the business entity needs to come into place. So when you start a business entity, we'll go through some of what that entails, but it really does solidify what you are doing. You are making sure that the money that's coming into the business is properly accounted for, as well as the money going out of the business. So that's a big thing most people end up skipping, is the thought process of paying your editors, your artist, your team, anything like that. You really need to make sure that you are not just, sending Venmo requests or something like that, but really tracking these business expenses. Stage 4 is full-time creator. So this is where your comprehensive legal foundation must be in place. So that's where it becomes no longer an option. You are looking to tell both the government and the world kind of how you're upholding yourself, that this is your full-time job and you need this business structure to be in place. And then finally is creator enterprise. So this is, where you scale to the point where you are looking to move kind of away from content creation as your main and branch it out as well. So something like starting your own CPG brand, like a consumer packaged good brand, your merch, your own food and beverage and things like that. And that is where you really need full legal service. You are looking at tons of things that are frankly way outside of anyone's comfort zone to do on their own. And so you really need to make sure you're in place there. So before the big mistakes that we're going to go into, these are some mindsets that I think that I see often that I see in creators. So the first one is I'll get a manager and they'll handle everything. Too many people, they kind of get sold this promise that all the unfun things they want to do in content creation can be solved by one person. And often people might prey on that and tell the person, hey, I'll handle everything. You just focus on streaming or whatever, and we'll do that. So what ends up happening is these creators don't look into more things for themselves. They kind of just listen to one point of truth, and that can really become a detriment to their growth in career. The next one is I'm too small to need or read contracts. And this is a huge one that happens. So the big concern I get a lot of times is someone going, I have no leverage, I have no negotiation power, so I'm just going to sign whatever they give me. Or a very incorrect mindset that a lot of people have, and it's no fault to anyone, is the contract they sent me is the contract they're willing to sign. Very often, this is a negotiation. You can move things. But don't feel like everything gets sent to you is the last final version of anything. And then finally, if I just sign with an agency, I'll be legit. And we see a lot of this discussion happening all the time on X and Blue Sky of the idea of what is an agency? What do they do for your business? Do you need one? Do you not need one? And oftentimes I see smaller creators thinking they want to just sign to get the name, to get the prestige, something along those lines, without really realizing what is that agency going to do and what is that agency going to need from them moving forward. So those are some of the mindsets that I see often that I just want to kind of go through and let people know that these are very normal. A lot of creators have these mindsets, and I'm hoping through this conversation and through these slides, you'll realize how to kind of bust through them. So the 5 contract traps that we're going to go through are exclusivity, non-disparagement, name, image, likeness, content length and renewals, and sunset clauses. So on to the first one, exclusivity. So the way I'm going to do these slides is I'm kind of going to go through a horror story and then how you're going to protect yourself from these exact type of situations. So my horror story was that I had a creator that an energy drink brand banned them from even drinking competitors. So in their contract, it said you cannot ever talk about other energy drinks. You can never be seen with one or have them on your stream, content, anything like that. So they were at an event. Someone posted a picture that they weren't even tagged in or wanted to be the one posting it. In their hand was a competitor. And we got a message within the hour saying if that picture doesn't get taken down, that's a breach of contract. So what I try to tell people is that sounds extreme, and it is extreme. But when you look at exclusivity, it can seem really innocuous because you're just like, oh, it just says I can't promote other brands. And if it's just that sentence, you might not understand what the term promote means to the other side. So what I tell people is please make your exclusivity brand specific, not category wide. A good one, just a harp one for drinks, is saying things like beverage. Beverages are a massive, massive market, and just because you work with one type of drink shouldn't prevent you from talking about every other drink or talking about that. For instance, you work with a water company, you shouldn't be exclusive and not be able to talk about an energy drink or an alcohol or a coffee or a tea, anything like that. Second one is please set time limits. So often you might be working with a company for a long period of time, but you might only be doing campaigns for them at certain times, like certain advertising sprints. A big thing is make sure that you are only setting these exclusivities during those time limits and don't have them lingering while you're not working for them. Very often, a way a contract works is they'll say, hey, we have an indefinite term that we're contracted together, but we'll come to you like maybe every couple months, ask you to do something. You want to make sure these contracts are not binding you during those downtimes. Third is limit it to sponsored content only. This is a huge one. So this is where you will say, hey, look, I won't talk about a competitor in the spots that you are paying me for. So if you're paying me to stream, I won't talk about a competitor while streaming. But guess what? Maybe I talk about them on Twitter, or maybe I talk about them just in general in public. Or hey, you sponsored a single video of mine. That doesn't prevent me from talking about them on stream. So that is a big thing to where you aren't selling your entire soul to this company. You are saying during the ads and during the content you're paying me for, of course I'm going to be loyal to you, but you don't own me from the rest of the brand. Finally, it's define exactly what competing products are. So if you can't get brand specific, you need to define exactly what competing products are. Very, very often, contracts end with a comma and then some, frankly, bullshit catch-all. So it will say, you can't work with company XYZ or any companies that generally compete with us. Strike that every time, because that clause right there is just ammo for the other side that maybe when you signed with them, they weren't doing, let's say, merch. And now all of a sudden they're a merch company. And they can say, hey, now all merch companies are competing with us. So now you're actually under an exclusivity for that as well. You do not know what a company is going to do in the future. And especially in the content creating scene, these companies play in a lot of different spaces. A lot of companies are doing X, Y, and Z. So you really want to make sure that's the case. Next one is non-disparagement. So the big issue here is non-disparagement is being used to silence creators. So here's my horror story. Creator discovered that a company was using their images beyond what they agreed to, and they were underpaying all creators. So when that creator figured out what was going on, they were thinking, hey, we really need to tell the other people. I want to warn people, or I just want to talk to the others and see if this is happening to them as well. Well, the company said that actually falls under non-disparage, and if you say anything, we'll sue you. That is a huge issue here. Non-disparage is being read incredibly broadly in the content creator scene to essentially be a gag order. So here's the way to protect yourself. So the first one is to limit your clause to false statements. So if you do false statements instead of all statements, that means you can still speak the truth. Now, you might have to prove that it's true, but this at least gives you ammo on your side, as opposed to the company being able to say anything you say that's negative is going to count as non-disparage, because obviously anything negative about them does negatively affect them. So in a very broad non-disparage, you are essentially signing up to only shill that company. Next, please, 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 if this isn't what I beat my drum on all the time, I need everyone to take this from this, is add expiration dates to everything. I read so many contracts that say non-disparagement survives the term of the agreement. That means it survives forever. Contracts that say they survive, I'll say it again, very, very important. If something says it survives the term, de facto it survives forever. So you need to set termination dates on almost everything in the contract, but especially things that bind you to not do something. So non-disparage, make it 6 to 12 months. So yeah, that way, let's say you have a bad time with them, they have a bad time with you. Y'all sit on it for a year, and hopefully by the end of the year, maybe it goes away or something, But that goes to the third step, which is make it mutual. So many contracts come to the creators completely one-sided. The creator has to protect the confidential information of the company, but not the other way around. Creator can't disparage the company, but not the other way around. Make them mutual, so that way, the worst thing that can happen is if it's not mutual, you have a gag order, they don't. So let's say y'all break up, like the contract breaks up, they can kind of, side eye, side tweet you, all this stuff, and you have to sit there and just take it, because anything you do could be seen as non-disparage while they run the muck. I've heard so many horror stories about a brand talking bad about a creator due to a full-on business issue that they had with them. So, it should be professional, but the brand continues to talk about it, and the creator has to just sit there and take it. They can't defend themselves. They can't do anything of the sorts. And then finally, include exception for truthful testimony in legal proceedings. Now, this is different than the first one. The first one is just, I would love for you to get this, so where you can say, I can speak truthful in public, but no matter what, you need the exception for truthful testimony in legal proceedings. So that way, if it gets to the point where you have to sue that brand, you are now not in this weird Ouroboros of breach of contract because you want to speak your truth in court. So the way, kind of taking one step back, if you might think that justice system means if something's wrong, you can go after them. The issue is that America especially has a very strong stance on if two willing consenting parties agree to something, that usurps the law. So if you sign away your rights, you don't get to then say, well, I want those back now that they messed up. You have to respect what you signed. So again, don't think that, oh, if the other party does something bad, that lets me out of the contract. Now, that was a very famous issue of a lot of people saying, well, if this party did something bad, my NDA is no longer valid. That's not the case. NDAs still hold up even if the other party is bad. Next one is name, image, likeness. This is the big one for a lot of people. So big horror story that kind of started my whole career when this happened was a creator did a 2-hour stream. They did not realize that the content said that the company could use their name, image, likeness in derivative works forever. And so they became the face of this product. They were in every social media ad. They wanted this creator on the website, all on the Steam page. It looked like the creator made the game. And there was nothing we could do because it allowed for derivative works, and those were all derivatives. So this is a huge, huge, huge point. If you are contracting your name, image, likeness, they are paying you for exactly what you are giving them. If you leave anything ambiguous, they will take, because it makes sense. That's what they're paying for. So you do not want to have this happen to you where you are so excited about, hey, they want me to stream this game, that all of a sudden now they did pay you for 2 hours, but now they're getting 30 hours worth of stuff because they keep using your clips in their social media ads, in their user-generated content streams, things like that. You really need to think, am I getting paid for exactly what I am getting? So, big ones here on how to protect yourself. Add usage limits. So I always do this. That says, hey, look, I'm streaming this game. You can use it, but in 3 to 6 months, you can never use that again. If you want me after 3 to 6 months, come back to me, pay me again, because you paid me for 2 hours of my time, and that's what you're getting. The next one is please, please, please put approval rights. If they are going to use your name, image, likeness in derivative works, such as, hey, we're going to take your stream, chop it up, and make some shorts out of it. We want to boost it on these platforms. Put that they can only do it with your prior written approval. That way they are not using your name, image, and likeness and attaching it to something you don't approve of. For a big one, let's think of it as if you worked on a gacha game. Let's say you worked on a gacha game, and then they keep using your name, image, likeness with regards to pulls and buying microtransactions, and all of a sudden it looks like you are really shilling for this company to have you promoting them to, their new banner or something like that. And you might not want to have your brand connected to, the gambling aspect of the game. Things like that. So please, if you ask for approval rights, they have to come to you and say, hey, we're going to use your short with this ad copy, and you get to approve that. The next one is, prohibit use in derivative works without additional compensation. That kind of is all of this. So let's once again always use a good example of streaming or YouTube. You are making a specific video or a specific stream. They are paying you for that. They are not paying you to just take clips of that and do whatever they want with it. They can't take that video and then put it on their paid ads unless you let them. So do not let them without them paying you additional money for that. And then finally, this one's pretty extreme, but often what happens is in these contracts, it states that you do not need to take down anything that you've previously done. So let's say you did ads for this company, they posted them on Twitter, they're allowed to keep them up. I sometimes put a kill fee that says, actually, my client can pay you X amount of money, and you have to go back through and scrub everything. It's pretty extreme, but hey, companies get in hot water, and you don't want to be attached to it. Next one is contract lengths and auto renewals. This one is also a doozy. So a big one, a creator tried to leave a sponsorship after they hated the sponsor to discover that their contract had silently auto renewed for a year and that they needed a $5,000 termination fee. Yes, so this is a big one. You need to realize how long that contract should really be about. So if you are doing a 1-day, 2-hour stream, do not have the contract lasts for a year. You need to shorten these contracts to the amount of time you were actually working with them. And also, if let's say you're working with an agency or management or some kind of person that's working for you, you also want to keep those short at the start to have a period of dating before marriage. You don't want to be in a year-long agreement and then you hate the person 2 weeks later. So shorten those contract terms, and that also gives you leverage to renegotiate at that time. Now, going to that is please, 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 no matter what, do not allow contracts to auto renew if you do not have really easy termination. So these points 2 and 3 go together. If a contract, like a lease, says, hey, if you don't tell us you're terminating 2 months before the termination date, it auto renews for another year, you are trapped for another year, and there's nothing you can do. So you need to make sure you know if there is opt-in renewal or automatic renewal and be ready for that renewal date and know that, hey, if it needs 30-day termination notice, 35 days before that, I better have a marker on my calendar to go and make sure I'm happy with how this is going. Next step is termination for convenience. I am so surprised at how many contracts are now silent on termination because they are AI generated and no one is asking to put in termination. You can't just terminate a contract because you don't like it anymore. You can't just terminate a contract because they breached it. You need, if the contract is silent, you are kind of trapped unless the term actually ends. So everyone I'm talking to, I want to make sure there is at least breach of termination. So if they breach the contract, you can terminate. But I'm pushing for every contract to have termination for convenience, which means I don't care if you're doing a great job. I still get to terminate if I'm not feeling it, and I give you 30 days notice. This makes sure you always have a pressure release valve. If things are going wrong, you know you can get out of it and maybe only have to pay them another billing cycle. Finally, cap early termination fees. I think early termination fees are terrible, but sometimes they're necessary. So for instance, maybe the people you are contracting with have to hire someone to work your contract. It makes sense that they're taking a risk on you, and if you leave, they're out money. So I get it. I get early termination fees for certain ones, but certainly they aren't universal. So cap them, make sure they're as low as can be or out of there. So, and then the big reminder for this one is a good way to think about it is creators usually are growing all the time. You're growing every day. The value you are today is not the value you are 3 months from now, 6 months now, a year from now. So please don't sell future year you at today's rate. These are items 5 and 6, final gotchas. These are some quick ones. So sunset clauses. So sunset clauses are clauses that let the party still get a benefit after the contract terminates. So what this could be is a manager or agent saying, hey, I brought in some deals, so even if this contract terminates, I still get paid my commission from those deals for a certain period of time. Now that is completely normal. However, there needs to be very important restrictions. So my horror story here is my creator fired their ineffective manager, only discovered that the manager had a 15% brand deal for life. So any brand deal that my creator was doing, they still owed a 15% commission on those to the manager forever. So now, not only are they out that 15%, but then any new manager is also going to take a cut of that, and then now the creator's out a lot of money. So please, for sunset clauses, you need to read these. They are scary, scary, scary. You need to make sure they are limited to only what you're dealing with right now, ideally only the deals that those people brought you. You need to set a maximum sunset period, the shorter the better, and you need to eliminate them entirely if you terminate for cause. Sunset clauses make sense if the parties are parting ways amicably and maybe it's not working out for them and they're going to look for else. If that person, manager, agent, contractor, anyone, if you're terminating them for cause, they should not get $1 afterwards. So that's a big thing to think of. And then finally, privacy and doxing risks. I always tell people this one, please, please, please protect yourselves. I really push for everyone to start an LLC. I can go into a whole rant about that at the end. But one of the biggest reasons is you need to get your name and your address off of as many things as possible. People are very trusting with their with their names and addresses, or they even think that they need to give them. So many contracts default to saying, please give us your legal name and address. That is because contracts, since the beginning of time, have not been created for us. They are not VTuber contracts. They are not content creator contracts. They're for normal people. Normal people have a business address because they have a brick and mortar store, and they're fine giving that out. So what you don't want to have happen is the horror story I have here, which is I was working with a marketing agency and they went, hey, we want your creator to do a new sponsor. Here's our form sponsorship agreement. And the form sponsorship agreement still had the last creator's info in it because the person forgot to scrub it. So I was sent a VTuber username, full address. And when I messaged him, I said, hey, this is still filled out. They went, oh, I'm so sorry. And I was like, no, if this went to anyone else, they could be dead. So this is my thing is my job to my clients is to make sure they are signing the least amount of things with their real name and definitely without their real address. So that is a process you work with your lawyer, with your security expert, and make sure that you are just really minimizing that. So that is a quick one. That is a whole other topic. But what I just wanted to say here is if a contract says it needs your address, no, they don't. If they're not really sending you something, if they're not sending you a physical product, they don't need your address. They need your email. So you could just choose to not fill that in. And if they say they need it, just tell them, I don't think you do. So really quickly, this is so those were the contract ones. And of course, if we have any questions, we'll go back over those. I also really like to take this time to tell people kind of what everyone does in the world of service providers for y'all as content creators, just so you have a real glimpse into it. Very often I see on X and Blue Sky of people saying do I need a manager? Do I need an agent? Does a manager also find me deals? Does an agent do my emails? So this slide is really important to just have you know what people should and shouldn't be doing. So we can go through this really quickly. A true agent role is to source you deals and opportunities. They're there to make the money go up. They're there to sell you to brands, to other services, and bring contracts to you. They shouldn't sign contracts on your behalf. Big distinction there is some agencies say, hey, give us the legal right to sign for you. The agency and you are not fully aligned on everything you do. You can be pretty aligned, but you're never fully aligned. So no matter what, please do not give anyone the right to sign on your behalf. You still need to read that contract and approve it yourself. You do not want to be accidentally put into a contract you wouldn't have done, or maybe that you want your own lawyer who only has your interest in mind to review it before you sign it. When do you need one? When you want to start sourcing more sponsorships, when you're sick of emailing and cold calling and all of this. So agents are really great for that. That's what they're there to do. They're there to help always be on your side, pushing for you, growing your brand. Next is your manager. Your manager is your second brain. They're helping you coordinate your business, your schedule, your communications. As your team's growing, you're getting editors, you have mods, you have 8 different revenue sources. They're the ones that are trying to bring all that chaos into harmony. So they shouldn't, though, be sourcing your deals or handling your legal matters. While so many people, they can do a lot for you, oftentimes managers are seen as a single band-aid that fixes all problems by people. That's not their job. That's not what they're trained for. And, that's not what they're best at. So you need to think of your managers as when you can't handle your admin tasks and you think that, hey, if I offloaded these tasks, I could focus more on the things that I need to do to grow that only I can do. Next is your lawyer. What I do is I review your contracts and I protect your interests. When I am contracted by you, my goal is to have your best interests in mind, not making your bank account go up, not saying no to every deal to protect everything. It is to find a good balance of it, but it is still to protect your best interests. I'm one of the few people that will say that you should say no to something because I get paid. The idea is I get paid either way. So I'm here to protect your interests. Now, what I can't do is make the business decisions for you. I can tell you what is market, what I think what I've seen from other deals, but oftentimes I am held by, in lawyers, I'm just saying I because it's easier for this one, I'm held by confidentiality for my other clients, for other agencies, that I can't just tell you, oh, I know they'll do a better deal because they've done a deal for XYZ. So I am there to make sure you are protected. But when it comes to the economics of is this deal worth it money wise or business wise? Do I want to, get in bed with this company over this company? You really need to make those decisions yourself. I'm here to help as much as I can, but I can't be the one that makes the final yes, no, go, no go. And you need one before you sign any significant contracts. Obviously, I tell people they need them earlier than they think they do, but really, once you start signing, significant contracts, you really need a lawyer on your side. And then the final step here is an accountant. They do your taxes. They are the ones that take all the money, all your different revenue sources, and they really make sure that it's all smooth and that tax season isn't a nightmare for you, because I'm sure everyone has had tax season be a nightmare. They're the ones who fix all that. I will say for accountants, you want to get them sooner rather than later. Do not engage one a month before taxes are due and ask them to do your whole year. Most accountants work throughout the year with you. Now, they shouldn't decide your legal business structure, though. One of the things is accountants are very accountant-pilled. They care about what they care about, and they care about how the money moves for them. But they do not understand often the unique complexities you as a creator need. So, for instance, I had a creator use a normal accountant that their family used, and the accountant went, "Oh, you're starting a business, so we'll name the business the name of your username, and we need you to file an LLC, so please fill out this document." And boom, my creator's name was just creator, comma, LLC, and if you looked it up, their full name and address were attached to it, because that accountant was used to doing that for 1,000 people and did not realize that that is a death sentence. So that is why you shouldn't let the accountant run with it. And then finally for this one, the InfoSec people, the way that we see it is that they are here to make sure you don't get hacked and hack prevention, and really make sure that you aren't exposing your career to nefarious people. Biggest one I had is someone who worked on a fake sponsorship deal, and they talked to my client for weeks as a spoofed email. This was not a simple just PDF, like please click this link. It was weeks of false communication that would have fooled anyone. Finally, when they went to sign something, stole their YouTube account, ruined it, and it was a 6-month process after that. And so, please, it is not so simple of just like password protector and I'm good. You need good protection. And with that, we are done with the slides. So thank you so much for your time. I know that was a hell of a lot of stuff very quickly. So because of that, we're going to use the rest of the time for questions. Once again, I can only say so much. I will direct things to what I can. I will say here as well, if you need to find me, I will put my contact information here. I think right now we can have Etu jump back in, put it in slow-mo, and start doing some questions if people have questions. That's a great question. So often, larger agencies, especially in the VTubing world, are offering both services. Once again, I think the way to think about it is really looking at what each person's role is. You should not be getting one person to do both. So within the business, you should ask them questions like, hey, what is your agency arm like? Do you have people out there constantly sourcing deals for your pool of talent? And are they, moving to make those bigger things happen, while maybe I have a personal point of contact that works more like a manager and works with me one-on-one? So that's where you want to see it, is that what you don't want to hear is we're an agency and we do one-on-one, or, a person in our agency manages so many of y'all, and then they do everything for you. So it really is asking the right questions and figuring out what they are providing you. And one of the big things I always tell people is if they aren't providing a very proper and intense deal pipeline that you feel like you should be getting, then you can always talk to them about, hey, I don't want this relationship to be exclusive, in the sense that if another agent or another person reaches out to me, I can also work through them. So oftentimes, if you feel like they're kind of doing jack of all trades, not having it be an exclusive relationship helps also kind of offset that pressure. At that point, it is, read the contract, right? So if they were guaranteeing you certain things, such as X amount of time, energy or managers doing this, like first look for maybe a possible breach from what that shift is. And if there isn't a breach of contract you can find, then look for your termination rights. Look to see if you could leave with only a couple days notice, 30 days notice. See if you can leave on your own for convenience. Use that to get out of that relationship, or at least have leverage to renegotiate to where you want to be now that the business has pivoted. But unfortunately, if you signed a contract that doesn't really put their feet to the fire to provide services and also has a long term, you are unfortunately stuck there, which is a major issue. And so that's something to think about at the start. And by following the tips for making sure the contract has a short enough term, you then get to pivot when that company pivots. Yes. Okay. So that is something I do with a lot of creators. I will say here, I help do it on a fixed fee basis. Varies a little bit state by state, but work with a lawyer. So the process is pretty simple. You file usually a single member LLC, and you look to pick a state that lets you not put as much information as possible. For instance, Delaware lets someone like me sign the certificate of formation and lets you put a registered agent that isn't yourself. Certain states, such as Louisiana and Texas, I believe, make you put the information about the officers and managers, which would be you. So it's looking at what states allow you to publicly file the least. Then once you file that LLC, you work with your bank to open up a bank account. And really, that's what the strength of the LLC is that you're going to have its own separate bank account that money goes into and money goes out of before it becomes your personal profits. That's the big thing that the LLC helps, that makes your life a lot easier. So your money isn't flowing into your personal bank account, and then you're not spending what should be your personal money on, let's say, editors, your agency cuts and whatnot. It kind of quarantines and silos all of that. So that way, when you pull the money from the business account to your personal account, it's a clean profit pull. So what I would say is, yeah, please don't make your LLC your username LLC, right? Most of my clients I tell to make it completely separate from them. There's so many LLCs that just have garbled names, and that is really the idea that you want there. It's the idea that even if someone finds that LLC, it might not link to you one to one, and then that LLC should, on that first search, if they go to look at the state register, it doesn't tie to you. And setting it up in a different state than you, setting it up in, like Delaware, where almost every business is set up, really helps also prevent it from linking all the way back to you. So what I tell people is to, use the network you're already in and ask around. So often you try to find people who have good word of mouth recommendations. So those are the best people you can trust, because so many people might look at the industry and might be good for SEO and Googling and might not be the right fit for you. Managers and agents is a little bit harder because they are so specifically tied to, where your growth is as a creator. So looking maybe at similar sized creators and seeing who they work with or what agencies they're attached to. When it comes to lawyers and accountants, it's finding ones that are in your budget and are willing to work with you at your budget. For me, my rates scale as my clients grow. That's kind of how I get to help them. I get to start earlier with them at an earlier rate and move up. But often, some law firms might ask for monthly retainers where you have to pay at least X per month, or higher rates no matter what. So finding someone that understands your budget, and really, especially in our scene is so small in the creator space that, like, reaching out, you will get a recommendation of someone saying, "Oh, I love this person, they're great." That is a more than enough to reach out and talk to them. Yeah, that is a great question, and I work on both sides. So I have brand clients as well, so I do draft contracts from their side. So the main thing is, it's just determining what you actually need from the creator. So for instance, we can go through some of the points I made. Make things mutual, not unilateral. Make confidentiality mutual. Make non-disparage mutual. The things that you want, the creator also wants. So make as many things as possible that you both get the benefit of that contract. Also, if you have risks associated with doing this, make those a priority and not ones that you don't care about. So for instance, like the termination fee, if you have no upside in terms of like sunk cost right at the start, then don't make them pay a termination fee if it doesn't work out. If you only need them for a 2 hour stream, don't make your contract indefinite. Things like that. So it's like from the business side, what you need to protect is you also need to protect, your ability to get out of a contract should something happen. The number one that people talk about is morality clauses, things like that, making sure you're getting paid. There is a vast middle ground of win-win, and looking to just set your contract in that vast middle ground will do so much for you. Also, it will save you a lot of time because as your brand grows, if your contract is pretty in the middle, people might, even lawyers will be like, hey, this isn't a good spot. You don't need to spend 2 hours of my legal time and your money on this, as opposed to if your contract starts way on your side, I might then review it and go, man, these guys are really trying to take you over. And then I'm sitting there and I'm rewriting it to be completely creator focused, right? So showing that you're coming into the contract negotiation, maybe not at the best deal you'll ever give, but way closer than your worst, is a great way to kind of build that rapport. I have a friend and client that does this work. They do a diagnostic of how you run your stuff. So let's say, hey, maybe you use the same password everywhere, or you aren't scrubbing metadata from XYZ. Your videos are showing a little too much of your house, something like that. They really just help look at the overall ability to attack you and try to help you cut those down. So the whole thing is that you want to be less of a target than everyone else, and then they'll go find an easier target, right? So you don't want to be the easiest target. No one's ever hack proof. If someone throws enough time and effort, they'll probably get to you. But the idea is making it as hard as possible to deter them, and that's what they really work on. If you are working with a group of people, I would definitely start some kind of entity between y'all. The reason why is seems like a tad overkill, but what you don't want to have happen is if one person goes to leave or one person has issues with something, you don't want the entire house of cards to fall apart, right? So definitely I wouldn't recommend like setting up some crazy joint venture day one of what rights each person needs to have. But at some point, especially if you are going to say make merch with each person's likeness on it, you are technically licensing the rights of each creator to make that. So you don't want to spend all the time, effort, and money to get this merch created, then for one person to say, well, actually, I don't want to do this anymore, and there's nothing that we've done where I've assigned my IP to you or given you a license to my IP, so actually you have to stop all this right now. That is the death sentence, right? So I would say that's definitely, it's planning, and maybe, the non-legal answer is I don't want people spending more money than they need to on things, so maybe it's not the first thing you do. But if you are thinking like, hey, there's four of us, we're really going to be, a little indie group together, and we're going to make merch, and we're going to cross-sell each other a lot, it might be worth it for you to create a independent LLC that maybe takes in the money that is made when all of you make money. So that way it's not, hey, we all did this thing and the $5,000 went to only one of us, and now we're asking that person to send it to the rest of us, right? So it's not even about trust. It's just making sure there's a structure in place so if there's any squabbles, it doesn't immediately kill the entire thing. Yeah, this is a hard one. Basically, if the contract term isn't over, it's not guaranteed that it's over. It's a very basic way of saying that. But the thing is just because a company says it's going under, you might not know if that's true until the entity you signed with. So let's say it's Machinima, LLC. You go and look at the Delaware entity search, and if you look it up and it says dissolved, until you see that, they're not really gone. And even then, they might have sold and transferred all the assets of that company to another company, and they don't necessarily need to tell you that that happened. So they might have transferred all assets in, let's say, a merger or a distress sale to another company. I would say the golden rule would be do not assume just because you think a company is dead that it's dead. You need to think that until the term of my exact agreement is over, I have to treat it like it's still around. As I said, please do not ever listen to someone saying this is the final, we accept no changes. If someone sends you the first version of a contract and says they send it to you, like say straight through DocuSign and say sign now, that's bad etiquette on their part. So do not feel bad for saying, actually, can you please send me a Word document? I need to review and revise. You are fully in your best interest as a business, as a creator, to at least make some changes. They did not get it perfect. So that is probably the easiest way to do it. What I would say is the common occurrence is, like I said, you get the contract, you say, hey, let me review it. I typically try to say you read the contract and you look at it from a level of points that you can discuss first. So my idea is you go back to them and you say, hey, I have questions on X, Y, and Z, and ask if they can change it to benefit what you wanted. So like, hey, I think this should be this. That is a little bit more friendly and opening the door than you getting a contract and then you immediately like emailing them back with a bunch of red lines saying this is actually what I'll sign. Some people might see that as aggressive. So my thing I always tell people is treat it as a human to human interaction, because that's what it is. As soon as it feels a little too lawyer to lawyer or business to business, people get cold, they get defensive, and they start just wanting to win. So please like try to keep the negotiation as human as possible. And then obviously if they ask you like, actually, can you come back to us with proposed language, that's when you do so. Ooh, that's a good one. Everyone knows the like M dashes and bold in the middle of sentences is a big one. No lawyer ever just bold stuff for no reason. And the largest one, I'd say two largest ones. It not being Times New Roman. I know a lot of people don't use Microsoft Word anymore, but every lawyer still does. So like Times New Roman is pretty much a standard and has been since the 90s. And then I think ChatGPT likes to export in Arial, and other AIs export in other fonts because they don't have the rights to Times New Roman. And then there is a line separating sections. There is a stylistic detail where there is a actual black thin line that goes across the whole page. No lawyer ever does that. So if you see, and AI loves them. So those are some big ones. The other thing I will always say is, and you'll get used to it as you read more contracts, lawyers do not write in plain English. We don't write in completely legalese, but you'll read some sentences in AI generated contracts that sound like what it did was just take the prompt and put it word for word into the contract. Like make the contract say this. It won't translate it into the proper legalese. It will just actually say what they said. So you can see a lot of those. And then the other thing is the boilerplate sections, the kind of bullshit miscellaneous sections. If those are really, really sparse, that's usually an AI contract, because lawyers usually just take the same boilerplate miscellaneous section and still chuck it into basically every contract. Once you start making a couple $100s, like I said, the IRS threshold is 1,000 for kind of treat as a business. Now, I'm not an accountant. I don't know if that is a diehard one. It's one I've heard. But you are tracking income, right? So once Twitch starts giving you a 1099, once YouTube, you're getting monetization, that is where you might not need an LLC yet, but you definitely on that year's taxes will need to disclose this as income. And so that is where you will need to start really caring, is getting your 1099s from anyone who's paid you more than, I think it's $500. The other side is required to send you a 1099. Yes, that is the sad, hard truth of this, is that it is very, very expensive. That is why I do not rely on breach of contract to get my clients what they need. It is much, much easier to simply get out of a bad contract when you figure out they're bad and cut your losses and minimize your losses than trying to recover those losses. The golden rule of business is about $250,000 is how much you need to have in dispute to make it worth a lawsuit. A lot of people will not have $250,000 in dispute in any one contract. My thing is, you might feel the sting of a bad contract, couple $1,000s, or they're not doing what they were told that you thought they were going to do. The easiest way to get out of that stuff is to have a contract that you can get out of quickly and minimize your losses. That is what I stress, because people will go, well, they wronged me and I want my money back, or I want to get them. You won't. The sad, hard truth is you won't. Some litigators will say, let's go for it because they want those litigation fees. I am not a litigator. I will never take you to court. My insanely large consumer packaged good clients I have, I tell them the same thing. Put a hand on their shoulder, say, hey, buddy, that sucks. It's a cheap lesson. Let's move on. So that is my general feeling on the idea of breach and actual litigation and claims. I'm much happier when my clients can say, hey, they burned me, but hey, I have a 15 days notice, so I get out in 15 days, and now I cut the bleeding. Very extremely rarely. Like, I will tell you, out of the decade of me doing business law, one client has gone to arbitration, not even litigation, off of something that we handled. Everything else has settled before that in terms of just the two parties yelling at each other, figuring it out, breaking it off. But I have only had one. Actually, we want to go fight, and it was because the claims were about 250K. So I will say that is to say, you need to treat your business and your income coming in and be laser focused on it, in the sense of, if an agency says they're going to pay you every month, I know it's sometimes scary to look at your bank account. Look at your bank account every month. If they say they're going to give you reports, look at the reports, because what's going to happen is if you catch it in month 2, that's much better than looking in month 6 and realizing they haven't paid you in 6 months. Same for sponsors. Big one is sponsors will say, hey, we'll pay you. You finish the stream. You're like, oh my God, that was a great stream of that game. And then you forget in 2 weeks not to follow up on your invoice. And then they never pay you. That's not on them. It's not a bad thing on them. They probably didn't maliciously mean to do it, but they'll forget too. They're probably dealing with hundreds of sponsor contracts. So please, to kind of rephrase that, is you are your best guardian. Make sure people are doing what you paid them or what they paid you to do. Yes. Honestly, when it comes to firing clients, it's never fun. It's not a great thing. The things that lawyers do not like, and I will tell you for that, is one, you not trusting them. So if you're asking me to do something, but then you are not questioning me from like the business perspective, but the legal analysis, I am now spending double the time to do the work and then have to like convince you the work is correct. That is a big one. And it's not even that I need to defend what I do. It's just it creates a really contentious atmosphere. Obviously, non-payment is a big one. You know, if I work with a lot of startups and unfortunately they might never be profitable, I keep with them as long as I can, but that's one of the reasons. And then the third and the newest one, similar to kind of the one, is do not just send AI to talk to me. I can tell. I've had a lot of tech startups just basically stop talking to me and just like respond to my emails with AI emails. I get it. I can read it. And if I'm not talking to you and you don't trust me or you don't want to work with me, I don't want to work with an AI agent. I want to work with you. I think the thing that people need to realize is lawyers seem like they have infinite time and money because there's these giant law firms that have infinite associates. But when you work with someone, especially in the creator sphere, I'm doing this and the other lawyers in the scene are doing this for the love of the game. We want to work with you. We want to be an integrated part of your team. So treating us like that is great. You know, if you're treated only like a document generating bot, it just doesn't feel right. So that's kind of the ways I would say the legal relationship can kind of pull back and forth. I say when they're about to get it, you know, lawyers might have, you know, I'm not speaking for all of us, but like I'm never so booked out more than like a week or two, right? So like you don't need to tell me months in advance. It'd be great for you to start finding someone you trust, but letting them know like, hey, I'm looking for a lawyer for when X, Y, and Z happens is a great way to do it. The only thing I would be concerned about is, like I said, you don't want to get with someone who's then at a monthly retainer before you need them. You want to make sure the lawyer that you are getting early is, I only bill you when you want me to bill you, things like that. So, but yeah, you can start looking. And I would say most lawyers, I would never tell you to give them a contract they need to review in 48 hours. You should assume they need a week and they probably need a lot less, but that will just at least protect you so you're not scrambling when it's a week deadline for you to get it signed and no one can help you. No, there it is amorphous, right? So that's the thing. That's why I don't have follow account numbers on that slide, especially in VTubing. We have seen that follower count is so different from other mediums because the followers are usually more engaged and maybe have better conversion rates on sponsors and click through and merch sales. So it really is figuring out what you need. So you might have a large follower base on, say, TikTok or Reels and Instagram, and that doesn't translate to the same amount of followers on, say, Twitter or YouTube or Twitch. It's a really, really hard thing to think through. When it comes to it, it's really thinking, what do you need? Because you could be at, 1,000 subs, but all of a sudden you're getting brand deals because you're reaching out to hyper niche brands that do want to work with you. So you need a lawyer then. You might be at, 400,000 followers, but you are doing something that's not really tied to sponsors that they don't want to talk to you. It's, especially, unfortunately, some of the not safe for work stuff, right? So like the numbers are so different that what I would say is you really need to feel for lawyers. Am I signing contracts? Managers, am I burning myself out on administrative tasks? Agents, am I not bringing in as much money as I think I should? And accountants, do I hate doing my taxes? I wish that is not something that we can do, like just because every contract is so bespoke. The best I can do is, like I said, is kind of those lines in the slides, and the slides will be available of what clauses to look at and what they should be. But really, I mean, every contract is so specific. It depends on if it's a sponsor deal, if it's merch deal, if it's an agency contract. Like it's infinite. I am working on certain forms that I will be providing for free to everyone on my website. That is a thing I'm working on for. The main one I'm doing for that is the agreement for IP transfer between consultants. So I want the contract out there for, hey, I want an artist to do commissioned art. I want a model. I want an editor. I want that relationship to be as solidified for as many people as possible. So that contract will be in the future public. And I'm hoping that we can use that to kind of just really reduce the animosity that happens sometimes with these tiffs of like artist versus VTuber and vice versa. Doing stuff like this, and going out there. So I am at entirely too many anime conventions. I love meeting people in person, and I love doing what I do. So it's going out there, it's meeting people. It is, obviously, as everyone says, everyone becomes a content creator. It is maybe putting yourself out there on Twitter, on YouTube or Twitch, and making videos or doing these kind of things where you're showing your expertise to show that you are someone that they can talk to. Running a kind of service provider business is insane. It's a lot of fun, but it is really selling yourself, and a good way to do it is to provide information to show that you know what you're doing so they aren't taking as much of a risk on working with you. So the terrifying thing about that is take that number of 250,000 and like triple it. You are not suing internationally. No one is at our size, right? So the idea there is I am honestly terrified anytime a contract says it's in the laws of another country. Once again, that really terrifies me for how it's going to be enforced and what you can do. A big one is intellectual property. I work with a lot of Japanese companies and they go by Japanese law. Japanese intellectual property law is different. I'm not a Japanese law expert. So what I tell my clients is when we go to do international deals, we have to treat them like we're just going to lose and let's hope for the best. Because honestly, to get the expertise to do an international deal will usually outprice how much that client's going to make. So what I try to tell people is, we need to assume that it's all going to go correct because, you want them to. And so let's make sure this contract, once again, broken record over here, but let's make sure you can get out of this contract, and let's make sure you are minimizing how much you are risking in terms of like how much of your money are they holding on to or how much are they going to pay you. Let's get some money earlier than we often would or something like that, just so if things break bad. But international contracts are still valid, so you can still sign them. The issue is it becomes very complicated to enforce them. So all contracts are rather difficult to enforce in that sense, but international kind of triples that kind of fear. Yes, I work with people in Canada, in the UK, all over the place. And so, yes, I have contacts for people, for lawyers and accountants in different countries that say, like, hey, over here we do X, Y, and Z. So there are LLC equivalents for you to do in those countries. You will be able to find people that can provide you that service. The big thing I will say there is you might not know, or the person you're working with, once again, you need to remember you need to protect your real name and your address. So make sure when you go to work in any other country, hey, what goes on the local searchable registrar? Because I have had the same issues where someone in the UK was like, I wasn't aware that I would have to do a yearly report that stated how much money the company makes. And because I'm the only person in the company, boom, I'm now telling everyone the exact amount of money my creator business makes. Things like that. I am going to start doing essentially, kind of office hour streams. So I will say the best place right now currently to just kind of message at me is on Twitter. I have to be careful about Discord and certain communications, obviously, as a lawyer. And once it gets to one-on-one, what becomes attorney-client privilege or not. So just adding me on Twitter. I am in different Discords as well. But I am looking to kind of branch this out. This is a good jumping off point of, being able to talk to more and more of y'all as I can. I will also be doing panels at a bunch of anime conventions, so you probably will see me there and you can ask me questions there as well.